entender, quando você fala, né, sobre a importância da precisão de entender os meios, né, para se conversar com o consumidor, onde isso se encaixa na questão do comportamento do consumidor, do estudo do consumer behavior, do comportamento do consumidor?
Yeah. Here's the thing that we've learned. Here's the thing we've learned about the consumer. We used to think that I was trained on economic theory. I was trained to believe that consumers make rational decisions and that producers make rational decisions. And that messed up my thinking because it's not true. And Carnegie Mellon had a great period in its existence back in the 70s when they began to say that rationality is very bounded. It's not only about rationality. And recently, because a Nobel Prize went to Mr. Kahneman, Professor Kahneman, they are beginning to recognize that classical economics has to be replaced by behavioral economics. It's causing a crisis in economic theory. As a matter of fact, to tell you how unrealistic economic theory has been, one evidence is you always will get 20 opinions from 20 economists about any event, right? So that alone proves there's no science, certainly no agreement. Secondly, when I studied economics, I never saw them talk about the forces in the marketplace. They never mentioned advertising, sales promotion, salespeople. Salespeople didn't exist. Wholesalers didn't exist. Retailers didn't exist. All that existed was two crosses, demand and supply, and price was set that way. So we're now at a stage we're ready for behavioral economics. What does that mean? How do people really make a decision? And the answer is, it's more about emotion than about mind. Ask the fellow who just bought a Mercedes. He'll say, I bought the Mercedes because it's a well-engineered car. So you say, why do you need a well-engineered car? And he says, I guess because I admire fine products. And what's that about? He says, well, I'd like to be in a fine product. And why is that? Well, I'm an important person. As a matter of fact, I would want to show how important I am. You understand how we went from him saying he bought a very fine product to actually he wants to show off. So how do you get at that level of understanding? Now, by the way, this applies to business people. We always say we're talking only about consumers, but purchasing agents for companies doing business with other companies, they're rational. Then why did you buy an IBM mainframe when the Honeywell was just as good and 20% less? Well, I felt safer as a buyer of the IBM brand. You see, so emotion has been now put in the equation, and it's important to get at what is really driving decision-making. There's a new method, by the way, called the ZMET method that is a very indirect way of getting customer insight without actually, by a certain questioning methodology, you can get an idea of what's really driving people who prefer a certain car, they prefer a certain wine. As a matter of fact, besides this new method called ZMET, there's a lot of neuroscience going on in the marketing world. We're asking, P&G is putting things on our head and asking us to look at a stimulus. And then they're watching our brain waves, and when it blips, obviously, unconsciously, without me being able to stop it, that blip meant something. Now, it could have meant that I was offended by what that thing was, or that I just was excited, and so on. We asked the person afterwards, do you know why a blip occurred at that moment? And then they'll give us some feedback on that. So what I'm saying is, you're raising this fundamental question about consumer behavior, and we have methodologies that are growing up now that might be promising in understanding consumers. But there's other things besides understanding how they make decisions. It's what's happening to consumers. Are we going to see the generation or development of anti-consumer behavior? I'm finding some people now who want less is more. In fact, we had this many years ago, small is beautiful, less is more. That would change everything for the big multinationals if suddenly we all want to live a simpler life. And as a matter of fact, as life gets more complex, I think more people will drop out into a simpler lifestyle. As a matter of fact, a simpler life needs marketing too. It needs marketing. We market a simpler life. So you can't get away from marketing. As a matter of fact, as more people don't go to work, but they work from their home, there's a big market for building offices in homes, building more equipment in homes, and making the home the habitat for a lot of marketing products and services.